dragons. We go out, we hire people, they go and find dragons, they steal their eggs, they come back, and then we hatch them and sell them to people. So that's the type of dragon we're selling.
So as Patrick started explaining, we are a company that sells dragons. So just like with any company, we had to think about what the most important parts of a company are. So the first four things that we encountered were we have employees, we have our equipment, we have to have inventory to sell anything, and then we have our customers, because without customers, we're not making money. So the first thing we did when we were modeling our project was we looked at our employees and we had to write up an equation for our employees over time. So we accounted for our hiring rate along with any deaths, retirements, or injuries, just so you know, on job or off. Dragons are kind of hazardous. Next, we looked into our inventory. So for our inventory, we drew an equation based on our production, our sales, and our waste due to damaged goods or like eggs that didn't hatch or things that went bad and wrong on the production line. And lastly, we looked into our net gross, or the amount of money we've accumulated. In order to look into that, we looked into our sales, our cost in materials, and then our capital investment in our employees and our equipment.
So some of the main equations that we modeled is change in employees over time, which is just DEDT, and so we took the hiring rate minus the incineration rate, and the change in inventory over time is DIDT, and that's the quantity produced minus sold minus deterioration rate times inventory. And then change in cash flow over time is DBDT, and that's revenue minus cost. And then we'll explain why there is an incineration.
So we went through and we found a bunch of different equations. Our expenses, which is CFT, is our labor, plus the daily investment, which is our DKDT, that's how much we invest in our capital per day, times beta KFT, which is how much of our current capital goes bad and we have to upkeep or maintain. So the beta is our maintenance rate, and the KFT is our current amount of capital. And then the price of our inventory, and then the general upkeep or the fixed cost, keeping the lights on, feeding the dragons, that sort of thing. And then we also modeled the employees, which we're going to go through in depth how we got to that. The hiring rate is just 1 in 900 people. The odds of hiring a person each day were 1 in 900. Incineration rate was the odds of someone dying a day, or 1 in 1,125, which are somewhat good odds. Then we have a capital rate. We just modeled all those. Our quantity produced, the QFT, is a simple Cobb-Douglas function. So you have your, it's just labor and capital with some exponents in there. Your revenue is the price times the amount that you sold. The quantity sold is the propensity of people that are likely to buy, and capital, or not the capital, the number of people who know about your company. So if we have 100 people who know about our company, and we think 1% of them are going to buy a dragon, then the quantity sold is 1. And then the hours worked is 10 hours a day per person. And then we're saying it takes $10 to feed and house each dragon for each day, which is our upkeep. And then we just modeled our potential buyers. And then here are some of the constants that we use: the rate of deterioration, our maintenance coefficients, all that sort of stuff was just constants. Some of it we didn't model quite right when we went through and we actually did the math on it. It didn't turn out as expected, but we'll go into that later.
So change in employees over time, so we have DEDT, which is hiring minus incineration. So we had the hiring rate at T over 900 and incineration at T over 1,125. So we integrate that, and then we have EFT is equal to T squared over 9,000 plus 1. And then in the next slide, you can see a graph. So this is the change in employees over time. So this is DEDT. And so at about 3 years, you're going to have a rate of about 0.2. And then, but it is a linear relationship between the two. And then, which leads the employees over time, which is EFT, which is a quadratic relationship. And at about 3 years, we'll have about 120 employees. So it's pretty, we're growing at a pretty good rate, but we're increasing the amount of employees over time.
And so the first really in-depth differential equation that we hit was the change in inventory over time, which, as I mentioned earlier, was the quantity minus the quantity that we produce, minus the quantity that we sell, minus the deterioration rate of our current inventory. And so we plugged in our Cobb-Douglas function, we plugged in our sales function, and we plugged in our deterioration rate. And then we simplified it all the way down. We kept on plugging in all the equations you see here. We try to integrate it using a bunch of different methods. We try to get down to just IFT, but the 0.02 IFT was causing us a lot of issues, and raising it to the 0.85 and the 0.2 is also causing some issues. So we, for a lot of the following stuff, we discount that 0.02 IFT, and we assume that since it's only 2% of inventory, we can count it as negligible for now. And when you do that and you integrate it, you get this sort of a graph, which is also very, very, very high. What it says is in 365 days, we're selling 500,000 dragons a day, which seems like a little bit too much if we're selling the dragons for $10,000 a piece. So there's some constants that we need to change to make this a more realistic model.
So our change in cash over time is represented as dB/dt because, as you can see, we've used almost every other letter of the alphabet. So we use B for like bank account, and the simplest form of that equation is obviously our revenue minus our cost to get like our profits. But obviously nothing's ever simple in DiffQ, so it expands further and further and further as you plug in more of the equations. So like our revenue ends up being the price of our product times the quantity of the product sold. And luckily that's pretty simple. That one expands a little bit more to the quantity sold, obviously, equation. And then our cost is made up of our labor plus our new investments. So our capital, we're taking our capital as being our investments. So it splits to our labor, our new investments, plus the cost to upkeep the investments we've already made, as well as the price of our inventory and the upkeep of the inventory, I think is what it is. Yeah, upkeep of the inventory. And then, as you can see, each of those expand further and further. And we were going to integrate this one, but we couldn't due to the issues with the inventory. So we kind of get down to the widest, most expanded form. We did mess around a little bit and tried plugging in like a few numbers here and there, like not here and there, plugging in all the numbers, obviously. And we ended up actually getting to like a 6 million profit or something, like $6 million
per day.
We did? Yeah, $6 million per day as our profit. So clearly we didn't really do some realistic numbers there, which is kind of hard to do with dragons. Couldn't really like do research on that to figure out, you know, the realistic prices for that. So we had to end it there for that one.
And I did want to mention earlier, I forgot, the possible buyers of the Z of T. We modeled that based on the city of Detroit. So over the period of 365 days, we assumed that everyone in Detroit would know about us. And so that's the rate you get, that 365 days, everyone in Detroit knows about you. And then from there, it spreads to the world. I think dragons become pretty popular if they were able to be produced. I hope at least. Yeah, and then so here's our final model equations if you guys want to look at. This is very simplified without the middle steps involved. We come to the same sorts of conclusions. It's our change in inventory and our change in cash rely on each other and are both very unrealistic because of our constants. But there's a lot of money to be made selling dragons.
And then, so I guess what we ended up concluding from our model, we only had one actually reasonable equation, which was our employees over time. Our inventory rapidly grew and quickly it would cost more to store our inventory than we'd actually make in a day. And then our other ridiculous equation was how much we were making. We got to the point where we were making, what was it,
$6 million.
$6 million a day. So although our model was not perfect, we did have one of our equations turn out. So what we could have done to fix the other ones is possibly, like we mentioned earlier, our 2% of the inventory, which showed our decay, we kind of called that negligible, which if we didn't, then we would have actually had decay of our inventory, and that could have helped that model become a little bit more realistic, and we could have also fixed the other ones. And then we also could have guessed our coefficients a little bit better, the ones that we assumed and kind of tried to base off of real things that we are not selling real things.
Any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Do you include life insurance for your employees working with dragons
No,
into production cost?
We're paying them $10 an hour. We can't afford anything.
I don't know about the risk of kind of hidden behind the contract.
Yeah. We didn't really. Those incineration rates are not published. Those are not in our SEC filings.
Okay.
Yeah. Colors, I think 27. Just on the top of my head.
That's including
27
shades,
and a half,
so,
yeah.
you know, I'm not an expert. Different patterns.
Yeah, some of them are polka dotted, some of them are camouflage.
Spikes.
Any other questions?
Real questions, maybe?
For our real profit?
Yeah. Alright, thanks guys.